Hi, I'm Cliff, and this is my garage. There's a part on many modern car engines that some people will tell you you should remove to improve performance. These people are not to be listened to. These people are incorrect. Today, I'm going to show you what that part is and why you should leave it alone. Hey, welcome back to the garage. And if this is your first time joining me, thanks for dropping by. So, what is this mysterious part that some people believe, mistakenly, that you should be removing from your engine in order to increase performance? Well, in my 2007 Hummer H3x, it's located right over here on top of the engine. It's the intake resonator, or the resonator box, or just the resonator. It is a resonator that's part of the air intake system, and it's an important part that should not be removed. So, why do people think you should be removing it? Well, it's because they think they know what it does. And it kind of does that a little bit, but that's not its primary job. It has a completely different job. And if you take away that job, the engine does not perform as well. Now, in order to understand their confusion, why they think that intake resonator is bad, we need to take a side trip and go examine how the exhaust system works. Now, as I'm sure most of you understand, the exhaust of a car engine is caused when the cylinder goes to the top of its stroke and the exhaust valve is opened up and it pushes the burnt air fuel mixture out of the exhaust valve and into the exhaust system. Now, it does this, it opens the valve, pushes out the gas, closes the valve, and then goes to its intake cycle. Now, the thing is that since it's pushing it out in that one abrupt motion, the exhaust out of an engine is not smooth and continuous. It's bursts of gases being injected into the exhaust system one after another. And because of that, you don't have a smooth, continuous flow through the pipe. What you have are basically shock waves or chunks of gas being forced down into the exhaust system. These pressure waves move down through the exhaust system and out the tailpipe. And if we didn't do anything else, they would come out just straight, and it would be very, very noisy. These pulses or sound waves are very, very high energy. And so in order to keep from losing our hearing, we run these things through a multi-chambered muffler, which it forces the exhaust to go through a circuitous route and lose some of the energy in those exhaust pulses and come out much, much quieter. Now, as any proper gearhead can tell you, a muffler restricts the flow of exhaust gases out of the engine, and that reduces horsepower. So, a muffler does reduce noise, but it also reduces airflow, which reduces power. Hold on to that idea because it's true, but it's also where they go astray. Now, one thing to understand about these pulses of gases or these shock waves going down through the exhaust system is it's a compressed chunk of air and it's pushing forward. And there's a little cavity of vacuum behind it. Well, engineers actually take advantage of that little vacuum to perform something called exhaust scavenging. You can actually use that tiny bit of vacuum and you can overlap the valve timing so that both the intake and the exhaust valves are open at the same time. And you can actually use that vacuum to pull some more of the exhaust gas out of the cylinder and make more room for clean, fresh air fuel mixture. And that increases your efficiency, increases your power. Overall, a good thing. And the reason this all works is because these shock waves are moving down in the same direction as you want the gases to go. So all's fine other than the noise. Now, like I said, we put a muffler into the exhaust system to quiet it down. But modern cars can also have what's called a resonator in addition to the muffler. Now, there are different kinds of resonators. The simplest one is just called an expansion resonator, where the exhaust tubing gets bigger. And when a pressure wave enters a larger volume, it has to spread out. It loses energy as it's going through there. Now, if we take and we line that expansion chamber with something like fiberglass or steel wool, you now have what's called a dissipative muffler. The sound waves kind of go in there and they're absorbed and dissipated. Basically, it's a cherry bomb muffler. My first car, well, not my first car, it was actually my second car. My first car was a late 60s Opel Kadett. My dad bought it used. It wasn't in great shape when I was 12 years old. And that's how I learned to work on cars, was working on that old Opel Kadett. We rebuilt some parts, changed some stuff, basically repaired it, brought it up where it was running fine, repainted it. It was going to be my car when I got into high school. Well, on my 15th birthday, my mom and dad bought me a brand new 1976 Toyota Corolla, and we sold the Opel Kadett. And one of the first mods I did to the one of the first mods I did to the Toyota was to install a cherry bomb muffler. My mom hated it for a couple of reasons. One, she couldn't understand why on earth you would go about modifying a perfectly good brand new car. And it just bugged her. But also, it was loud. Not super loud, but it was way louder than the stock muffler, of course. And she said it sounded like I was driving an old junker down the street. To her, a loud exhaust meant a burned out muffler and a junk car. Well, I disagreed, and I kept my cherry bomb muffler, and it did give a noticeable improvement to the performance of the car. It gave me quite a bit more power, and that's always good. Well, more power is not always good in the hands of a 15 or 16-year-old, but in my mind, it was very good. So you can have an expansion resonator. You can also have what's called a Helmholtz resonator. Now, a Helmholtz resonator is much more complicated. It's a whole series of tubes and chambers that are off to the side of the main airflow. Basically, the airflow is going past the Helmholtz resonator, and the sound waves are propagating into the resonator and being dissipated. A Helmholtz resonator is much more tunable. Any kind of a resonator is different than a muffler. Yes, it does dampen the sound, but it dampens the sound of a very narrow band of sound. So a very, very narrow band of frequencies. So you can kind of think of a muffler as being a volume knob. So if you turn down the volume knob, all the frequencies get quieter. A Helmholtz resonator, or any resonator, is more like a graphic equalizer, where you're going to turn down a very specific band of frequencies. This lets you use a resonator to get rid of any particularly irritating frequencies that are being generated in the exhaust system. So whether it's an expansion resonator or a Helmholtz resonator, finding resonators in the exhaust system is pretty common, and people will ask, well, what is that thing? What's it for? And the answer they get is, well, it quiets down the exhaust. And in their mind, quieting down the exhaust means it's a muffler. And that's where the misconception comes from. So in order to understand why these people are confused, we need to go back to the intake side of the engine. Now, I'm sure most of you understand that you've got the piston in the cylinder, and on its intake stroke, it moves down, the intake valve opens, and it pulls air and fuel into the cylinder, and then the intake valve shuts off so that the engine or the piston can begin its compression stroke. Well, you've got all this air moving in towards that piston, and suddenly that valve closes, and this air has momentum to it. So it hits that closed valve and it compresses and it bounces back, generating a pressure wave that goes back up the intake system. Now, it's nowhere near as strong as a pressure wave in the exhaust system, but it is still there. And it now, the big problem is it's moving in the opposite direction. You want air coming in this way. That pressure wave is moving back the other way. And it's bouncing off of things, and you don't have just one pressure wave being generated off of this. You have multiple pressure waves. However many cylinders are being fed in that particular intake manifold or intake runner. Now, all these waves are bouncing around. They overlap each other, and they create pockets of high pressure, which interfere with the air coming into the system. Like I said, on the exhaust side, these slugs of air or these pressure waves are moving down in the direction you want the exhaust gases moving to start with. Here, they're in conflict with each other. We want air coming in, the pressure waves want to go out. The purpose of a resonator is basically the same thing as on the exhaust side. It's designed to allow a larger volume where those pressure waves can go into and be dissipated. Now, in the case of the Hummer here, this is a Helmholtz resonator. Actually, it's two Helmholtz resonators. There's one on each side. The airflow is coming in through here, and it's going straight through to the throttle body. This resonator box is not interfering with airflow at all. In fact, it's helping the airflow because it's getting rid of those pressure waves coming back away from the intake manifold and allowing a much cleaner flow of air to go in from here and towards the throttle body. Now, because of the confusion with the resonators on the exhaust system and what people know about mufflers, people assume, these people that are confused, assume that this is an intake muffler. It's designed to somehow be quieting down the noise coming from the intake system. And in reality, it does that. But that's not what it's there for. Its purpose is to get rid of the pressure waves coming back from the intake system to allow a clean airflow. So if you remove the intake resonator, now those pressure waves are allowed to propagate all the way back through to the filter box. And instead of increasing your horsepower, you're actually going to cut the amount of horsepower because you're interfering with the incoming airflow. So hopefully that didn't get too nerdy for you. Bottom line summary, this resonator box is designed to improve the incoming airflow of your engine. And by improving that incoming airflow, you get more horsepower, you get better performance, and you're just a happier camper overall. If you remove that thing, you're not going to gain horsepower, you're going to lose horsepower, and nobody wants that. But wait, don't go anywhere. Before you leave, go down there, find that thumbs up button. Give me a like on this video. That feeds the YouTube algorithm by letting YouTube know that you are enjoying the videos that I make. What also feeds that algorithm is subscriptions. So go down there, find that big red subscribe button. Not this one, the one down there. Click on that and subscribe to my channel. Now, it doesn't cost you a thing, but it really, really helps me out. Now, if you want to keep up with everything that I'm doing here in the garage, and I do a wide variety of strange stuff sometimes, right next to the subscribe button is a little bell icon. Click on that, and that turns on notifications. That way, YouTube will let you know every time that I post a new video from here in Cliff's Garage. I'll see you next time.